What's up, you guys? It's your girl, Amber, and today we have a very special conversation that we're having today. I'm sitting with Adnan Khan, who is one of the first people released from a new bill that was, well, I'm gonna let you talk about it, but today we're gonna get into a conversation about the prison system, mass incarceration, generational trauma caused from it, amongst a lot of other things that, as you guys may know if you follow me, is a big passion of mine when we're talking about politics and changing where we are in the country today. So I'm excited to have you.
Thank you. I really appreciate and respect your advocacy and your activism. I mean, for you to it is your advocacy and activism, but for you to sit with me, talk about mass incarceration from someone who's directly impacted and bring awareness, I just appreciate you and making this time for me.
No, I appreciate you because what you've done from inside, from being in prison, starting Restore Justice, which I want you to talk about, so we got to start there, right? What you've done from the inside, I can't even explain what it's going to do for not only those couple thousand people, but for this country in general. And so I really appreciate that because we can only preach so much, but like to have someone that's been through it to stand up and say, oh no, I'm gonna now spend my life helping. Because I think once people become a part of the system, become state property, county property, their instinct is when they get out is just survival, right? I have to survive every day now that I can't think about fighting for others, right? And so it's really big of you to now put yourself in that position to do that. And so I appreciate you as well because we have to come together to make an impact in the right way.
Thank you. And you know, we're probably going to get into this, so I don't want to jump ahead, but when people do get out of prison, I've never met anyone that said, I can't wait to get out and come back, right? And looking at some research and data, they said 82% of people come back within the first year because of housing and employment. People want to work, people don't let them work. Right. People want to find housing, people don't want people living near them.
Exactly.
And so society society creates this lack of public safety.
Right.
And so that's something I want to share as we move along and frame our conversation on society's responsibility equally to the people who do commit violence and commit harm.
Well, let's start with telling us about Restore Justice.
So Restore Justice is a nonprofit organization that I co-founded with my co-founder, Alex Malik, inside of prison, inside San Quentin State Prison. Before we were a nonprofit, we were already doing the work. Our work has always been tied to people who are serving life sentences and violence. I think society misunderstands what violence is. You know, at one point, people felt like drugs were a crime, but now we are starting to understand it's more of a health issue. Yeah. Similarly, I think people think that violence is a crime, which it is, but it is an emotional health issue. The reason why people commit violence and hurt people is because they're hurt themselves. Yeah. And so the work that we were doing we're doing proximity work around people who have been harmed. So people who have lost loved ones to violence, murder, we're coming into the prison, we're inviting them and having dialogues with people who have committed such acts. From there, we started, imagine like a table like this with a person who has committed violence, serving life, person who has lost a loved one, a district attorney, either a state senator or assembly member, and then community activists in a prison setting, in a circle, having a dialogue. And then from that, we created policy from that system of proximity. Eventually, we called it Restore Justice, turned into a nonprofit. And my co-founder one day said, when do you go home? And remember at that time, I told her, I have about 12 or 13 years before I appear before a parole board. Wow. And a parole board has an 84% denial rate in California. So for me, to say that to her, she couldn't believe that. And we sat down and we said, we need to change something about the felony murder rule. And I know you have some follow-up questions about that. Yeah. Long story short, we ended up changing a law that I was affected with. I was sentenced to 25 years to life at age of 18. I ended up serving 16 years, and from that law that we created passed, I ended up being the first person resentenced under that bill, and I've been out about 11 months now. The same judge that sentenced me to 25 years to life resentenced me to 3 years.
After you already served 16?
After I served 16 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then, so if this bill was in place long time ago, you would have served 3 years and been out?
Actually, I would have served less than 3 years. I feel like the judge ended up giving me, I believe, the max sentence 3 years. So I probably would have done maybe 8 months, maybe 16 months.
That's so it's so frustrating to think about. And you're just one of thousands of people that go through this. And so that's the other thing is the sentencing to me never matches up with the crime. I've had friends that were in jail for 9 years for not even a handful of weed. And some of them are still sitting in jail while people are thriving and it's becoming a $1 billion industry. And that's what's so frustrating, is because our system in general is so behind. It's not where we are today and like as a society, and it's just not fitting exactly with what you were saying. Emotional responses, not taking care of people, not understanding what people go through, and putting them in a position where they can be rehabilitated, changed, and like be put back into the society and become people that contribute to our society, like, and not just be put back in the system or the cycle of going right back. So
you brought up a great point about $1 billion industry. Right. First of all, let's talk about, you pay taxes, right? I pay taxes now, right?
Yeah.
So our money is going into the prison, and we don't even realize in America so $80 billion go into our prison system, right? Talking about where I was housed in California, California is now at, I think it's more, but last time I looked at it, which was earlier this year, $13 billion taxpayer dollars are going into California prisons, 13 billion. Around 70% is for correctional officers' pay. So first of all, people should know too that all the government, like furniture, you go to state hospitals, state employment agencies, the couches that you sit on, the furniture that you use, the desks are made by people inside. Every single license plate that is on a car in California is made in Old Folsom Prison near Sacramento.
Wow.
Every single license plate. One of the jobs I worked, I had to work. I worked in the kitchen at 3 a.m. I didn't want to do that. They forced me to do that. I was paid 8 cents an hour. And then I owed court fees, right? So which meant I owe 55% restitution. So out of the 8 cents an hour, the state would take 55% of that. So I would end up with 3 cents and some change, I like to say. Yeah, and as all this furniture, as all this stuff was starting to be made. So when you talk about rehabilitation is not a priority. I don't care how, yes, people start saying that in the system and they'll tell you that, and maybe it is slowly moving into that, and it's because of people like yourself, community-based people that are creating this uproar and saying, no, we want rehabilitation. We don't want, when did people incarcerated become workers?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, they can't even take that and use that as, oh, I have job experience in this when they get out, right? So what is the point? And that's what's really frustrating. So, okay, before we get into all of our talk, I want to give my audience the basic knowledge of jail versus prison. And like in federal prison versus county prison, jail. What does that look like?
All right, so let's talk about, let's start with county. County is local, right? And I also want to talk about, let's take a little step back with police stations. Right. So when a crime is first committed, or when someone is first arrested, doesn't mean they committed a crime, because you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, right? When you're handcuffed, put in a police car, whatever that area you're in has a police station nearby. You'll go to the police station, you'll get booked, then you'll go to the county jail. So if you look at your county, what county do you live in? In that county, you'll be housed in that jail. County jails and courts are together. Meaning that when I'm in county jail, I'm going to court to see whether I have a court hearing, to set a date for trial, sentencing, whatever that may be. Depending on your case, it varies how long you can be in county jail. Now, some people, once they get sentenced, they could be sentenced to county jail, right? And for example, you could be sentenced to 8 months county jail. And that'll be 8 months you'll spend locally in the county where the crime was committed or the harm was committed. Once you get sentenced to more time than that, or again, it varies, you get sent to a state prison. A state prison is like what I like to say, if county jail is like high school, state prison is like a college. So it's like turned up. People are serving life sentences there, like myself. You're there forever or for a long time. And the state owns you, meaning the state of California owned me, not the county of the county that I was in owned me anymore. Different jurisdiction. Now, federal is the federal government. So in our system, in our United States democracy, if that's what you want to call it, there's a federal government, and then the federal government there's also state governments. And the state governments kind of function on their own. Now, they're all federal laws. If you violate federal laws, a lot of them have to do with state. For example, if you have drugs from one state to another, you've crossed state lines.
That's federal.
And so then think about it like it's federal, but what county would you go to? What state prison would you go to? Right? So the feds have to take care of you. And tricky thing about the feds is when you get sent to the federal prisons, there aren't counties or states. So if I'm from California and I commit a federal crime and I get sent to a federal prison, I can be in Louisiana.
Yeah.
I can be in DC. I can be housed anywhere. As opposed to committing a crime in California for state prison, you go to California prisons. 10% of people that are incarcerated, I think the number is nearly 2.3 million people in America are in prison. You look at how many people live in Hawaii, it's like 1 million something.
Damn.
So there's 1 million more people that live in prisons in the United States than they do the total population of Hawaii.
Wow.
So when you talk about federal prisons, 10% of people incarcerated of the 2.3 million are in federal prisons. Everybody else is in a state prison. So 90% of people are in the states.
Okay, so then within that, how do we know what's privately owned versus a state or federal prison?
So private prisons are basically private companies. Now you look at mass incarceration, that's literally how it happened, right? So you had overcrowding. So California, I was there. There were too many people that they were locking up. I remember, and prisons were being built. Matter of fact, there was a statistic I read in Angela Davis's book. In a span of 15 years, I believe it was from 1990 to 2005, there was a prison being built in the United States every 10 days.
Wow.
Crime rates were going down though.
And that's where racial profiling and all these things started happening, because if jail is a financial institution, if they're making money from this, then they're pressuring our cops to find ways to throw people back into jail because it's a money-making business that we as taxpayers are actually paying for. And that's what's so disgusting to me. And that's why it became a passion of mine, because it doesn't make sense. There should not be people being able to, live this lavish lifestyle because of people that are being thrown in prison. And that's what's disgusting. So then how do we combat that? Where do we start? Because in general, I don't think that we should have private prisons.
No, I mean, private prisons are 8% of mass incarceration. It's a very, very small number. It's a little drop, but it does matter, right?
Yeah.
And it does matter because the privatization, the money, the funding, yes, it does matter. But if we do get rid of private prisons, we won't touch the needle of the mass incarceration problem. I'm not saying that there should not exist, but if we just talk about private prisons, let's just say you have tons of money, you want to make money off of incarcerated people. You can go to the California government and create a business deal and say, hey, I have this prison somewhere in Arizona, or I have this location in Arizona.
I want to build a prison.
I'm going to build a space. You send me the people incarcerated, and I'll house them for you. Because hey, California, you have a overcrowding issue that the federal government and the state government are putting their thumb on your neck, say, hey, you need to change this. Mm-hmm. The way we can help you is we can remove some of your numbers here. That way you can say California only has X amount of people, and the rest will house here. And so imagine.
Are they even regulated like state prisons are?
That all varies.
Well, in general, that's one of the issues, is that it's not regulated and equal across the board as far as like rehabilitative programs and things like that. So then what scares me is I think private prisons can do whatever they want, right?
And first of all, any prison can do whatever they want. And yes,
really?
Especially any prison can do what they want. State prison can do what they want. Rules don't necessarily apply when it comes to government or official, at least within the corrections. They do and they don't. And so that's where it gets very, very tricky. Now, when you talk about incarcerated people being a business, why would you invest in their freedom? Or why would you invest in their healthy reentry into society?
Exactly.
You want them to come back.
Exactly.
You want more and more to be in there. And guess what else happens? What happens is these private corporations or people with money actually have enough money to put stuff in through the legislature, put stuff through the ballot where people can vote on more laws. This is the penal code. The laws in 1970, it was like this big. Mm-hmm. This is today. Mm-hmm. The laws. How did it happen? How are crime rates lower than they were in 1970?
Right.
With the less population, we have a way bigger population today, mm-hmm. and crime rates are lower, but why are laws more? Private corporations, the people that wanted to literally create more laws, lengthening sentencing. Right. And so we talk about mass incarceration, but there's a thing that I always tell our organization and other people, static incarceration, right. Meaning people aren't going anywhere. Right. Like I would have still been in prison 9 more years if this law didn't change. Right. At least 9 years because I had a life sentence. I was actually technically sentenced to death, all right, a natural life death. Mm-hmm. When you take community out of prisons, all right, one thing we want to do is shut down prisons, absolutely. But until they shut down, one of the things I want to do is open up prisons, meaning I want people like you to go in the prison, right. and talk and meet and provide support and resources and get those stories, go to the legislator and change the system that way. Because it's people like yourself that is going to want the actual change, not an investment, a business investment.
Right.
So you're going to keep people out of prison.
I'm thinking about the well-being of our people. What is helping them or their situation by this happening? Are they being rehabilitated? Are they learning? Or is this discipline even progressive for them? Like, is this even working? And so that's the thing, because I feel like majority of them that come out of prison end up right back because they don't have the tools or what they need to, come out and... Or
they can't get a job out there.
Oh yeah, that's exactly...
I'm gonna give you an example of reentry, right? I have a friend who got out, he did 10 years. While he was inside, matter of fact, the Governor Brown I mentioned, he commuted his sentence. And what that means is he submitted something, he looked at his case, he said, wow, like I'm gonna use my governor's power, not the local courts, not the DA, not any of that. I'm gonna use my power as a governor to commute your sentence. And I'm gonna send you to the parole board now. Instead of 25 years, in 10 years, go now. That's like winning a lotto to be commuted. I was actually commuted as well.
Right.
But I was commuted to 15 years to life, which meant I had to go to the parole board. Fortunately, 3 weeks later, I got out on the bill. But so my friend gets out, and this is the struggles of reentry. He gets out after being commuted by the governor, winning the lotto, but didn't get out immediately, went to the parole board with all the denials. Parole board found him suitable. The new governor, it was around transition, said, okay, I'm gonna sign off on you. He comes home. While he was incarcerated, he earned his AA degree, all sorts of classes, all sorts of like substance abuse, whatever issues he felt he had, he dealt with all of it. He gets out, he gets put in a transitional home, and he's connected with up in Berkeley. He said, I have connections with UC Berkeley who will pay for my tuition to finish my degree, to get my bachelor's, and I have a job offer at a tech company in San Francisco.
Wow.
His parole officer and that house said, no, for the next 90 days, you can't go to school or work. Why?
Did they give reasons?
Because you're a risk.
Oh, wow.
So no matter how much, he had everything set. All he needed was a thumbs up from his parole officer.
And then why would they keep that from him, or anybody else that would get that opportunity? It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make sense, right? But that's what we've created. The one thing we have to understand that, like, you're a voter, you have so much power, but a lot of voters don't know they have that power.
Right. Or they don't even know what issues to look at. And that's exactly why I wanted to have this conversation with you, because we have a problem with our system, our prison system in general. We have a problem, but then there's so many layers to that. So then what does it look like? Where do we start? And that's why I wanted to have this conversation with you, because when I think about these things, my head just explodes because I'm looking into it and just being like, oh my God, I can go in this direction, this direction, this direction. So that's why I want to talk to you. So what if we sat here and said 3 things that we can change right now, and like what that looks like, whether it's on the disciplinary, rehabilitative, or just the system in general, and how they make it hard for when they go in or come out? Like, what could we pinpoint right now and say, this is what we need to work on?
I think there's many things, and like you said, there's so many issues. Right. There's the finance issue, there's a rehabilitation issue, there's a reentry issue.
The corrupt officers.
That, like, I recently came from Norway and saw their system, and that's another conversation. Yeah. But yes, absolutely. First and foremost, I want to encourage everybody to not just visit a prison. Yes, visit a prison, but you have to know someone personally, befriend someone that's formerly incarcerated and someone that's currently incarcerated. Right. You have to, first and foremost. That way you know the people you're talking about. Yeah. A lot of people understand this conceptually, and that is not wrong. Like, to understand it, like, hey, this is the issue, I want to get involved. Go figure out where's your local prison. Mm-hmm. Most prisons are in rural places, but really they're like 1 or 2 hours away from people. Right? So like, where's your local prison? We're in LA right now. There's one right here, 1 hour away. There's another 1.5 hours away. I'm
trying to remember the stat, but I just read a statistic in Business Insider not that long ago of how many people actually have someone around them, whether they're a friend or family, that is or has been incarcerated. And the number it blew my mind, but that's the truth. So majority of the people that are gonna watch this right now have experienced that in some way, and they're lucky if they haven't, but majority of people have experienced that, especially if they're people of color or from certain areas, right? So that's why this is really important, because I think you're talking to people that has experienced it, more than not.
Well, I think the next step for me would encourage people to get hold of your local community-based organizations. There are tons of people who are doing this work, right? There are a lot of people who are I'm talking about in the nooks and crannies of like either legislation, the things that you mentioned about whether is it policy or if it's correctional officer training or new way of incarceration or abolition, they're out there. Once you do that, you'll figure out exactly what law is up, right? So one thing I learned once I started while I was incarcerated, getting into this space of law and legislation and what's up next, I learned that, in 2019 or 2018, this bill is up. What's about, like you said, people don't even know what's out there, right? And so to know that, this in 2020, I can vote on this. Voting matters. Like people say voting doesn't matter. Voting absolutely matters. Absolutely matters. And so when we say like in 2020, there's gonna be, for example, a ballot measure where people can vote on to get rid of 3 strikes, right? What do you feel about 3 strikes? You do your research on 3 strikes. There's organizations out there and go to that ballot box. Tell your uncle, your mom, your aunt, everyone, your friends, your family, go into the communities, knock door to door if you can, and educate people and tell them to go and vote. There's other ways, like who is your local district attorney? Do you know?
No one knows.
You should know.
I know, right?
Because you should know, because they're the ones who are the funnel to mass incarceration. Who's your local?
Follow some of these people on Instagram. I feel like that's the first step, you guys.
Giveaway.
I literally, I say Instagram, but in general, just Facebook, whatever it is. I find out majority of what I know in different sectors, different cities, different states, because I follow attorneys. I follow congressmen and women. I follow senators. I follow organizations, grassroots organizations, like everybody that's doing movement, so that I know what's happening, what's moving. And even from those things, I get small little excerpts on how I can help them. Hey, just sign this petition. And that's what I try to do for people, because most people, it's hard to think outside of their normal everyday survival, because they're just trying to survive, right? This country makes it hard to think outside of the box. And that's why certain people keep getting elected, because only certain people that are lucky enough to not have to wake up and think about the survival are able to go and live their, nice lifestyle and go and vote. And that's why the same cycle of people are in charge when they have no idea where society actually is. And I think that we need more people in charge that are closer to the pain, the hurt, right? And what is going on. And so that's the other thing we have to do, is wake up and support the people that are actually paying attention to these things. So start there, just follow them, see what's going on.
And if you don't agree if you don't agree with what they're doing, then mobilize someone that can. Like you, for example, right, Amber, like you literally, seriously, I've known you, 2022, Amber for 2022. So like you literally can be an amazing legislator, senator, assembly member, a district attorney, the governor. Why not? Like, why not?
Exactly.
You know this, you understand it, and you understand it fairly. It's not just this sometimes you have this internet abolition happening, right? People just sit there and talk, and no, you've investigated, you've understood.
No, I chose to live
issues.
where I live to be around the issues. I was telling Ian this on the way in, like where I live is because I want to be around where the homeless community. I want to be around where we have a problem with mental health and substance abuse. And I have the same healthcare as everyone else, so that I know the life. I'm living, the choice that I'm making is so that I understand more than I thought I already did in the first place, so that when it comes time for me to step up, I have that well-rounded understanding of where we are and what we need. Most people don't get that or understand that. We have these people living in these mansions, out here living, like owning all these businesses that could actually be hurting us or not allowing us to work at these places or whatever. And that's just not fitting. So I'm not okay with that. And that's why I'm getting to the point where I want to step up.
And that's great. The proximity that you're talking about, being close to the problem, right? And many of us have been on that side of the problem. Not say that we are the problem, but we've lived it. We've lived what people are talking about, right? We've lived marginalized. We live ostracized. We've lived that. And so to live that, and then you understand what your needs are. If you even look at the purpose of a government, you're there to protect your people and to provide services for your people. And as you well know, there's a huge divide of what your people is. You look at district attorneys, when they say, I represent, even if you look at my trial transcripts, right? Or you look at my case, it literally says the people versus Adnan Khan. Right. So you're immediately telling me that I'm not the people? Right. Like I'm not part of you? So my well-being and the welfare of who I am does not matter to you anymore, because you already divided and separated me. And I'm just one representation of 2.3 million people that you've done that to.
Jeez.
So when you say people, who are the people?
Right.
Who are the people in your district? A district attorney, meaning you're the attorney for the district. So like, I'm not part of your, yes, I did something wrong, right? I take responsibility for that, but aren't you also not my attorney?
Right.
Right? Aren't you also not there for my welfare? How did I get to this point? If you look at other countries, and I know other countries many European countries are homogenous. They don't have the history of slavery, racism. They don't have that, right? Systemic racism, oppression. But I will say when their approach to their people is a lot different.
They care about their well-being and them coming back into society as productive people in society. Like I think I've done so much research on the jails and other places where like they're working on farmlands. They're not chained up. There's no bars on their windows. They're working on a farmland by a beach, and they wake up happy and they're finding themselves again because it goes back to what you were saying earlier. It's hurt. They're hurt people. Hurt people do things to hurt people.
Why would you hurt them more?
Exactly. And why would you not provide them with the tools that they need to be better humans, to be better citizens, right? And so that's what's frustrating. And so I thank you for having this conversation with me because it's so needed and so necessary. And I want you guys to do more research on everything that we talked about, but also go support Adnan, go subscribe to him, because what you're doing and Restore Justice is doing, the impact that it's gonna make is just beautiful. So I appreciate you. I'm a supporter of you. Anything you want to leave them off with?
No, I just appreciate. I leave them off by thanking you. I really do appreciate this. You didn't have to do this. You know, you could have continued to do what you do, which this is what you do. But to sit here with me, and I know it's not about. I mean, it's not about like for me, honestly. And you mentioned this earlier. Like, it's not so much about like. It's great to have subscribers and everything, but this is like a huge cause.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to shoulder a cause.
Yeah.
It's hard. I mean, you stay up at night. You know, you're constantly studying. Like you said, I've studied everything. And that takes a certain type of will, a desire, sleepless nights, hunger, right? You sometimes, like, I'm sure you forget to eat.
Oh, all the time.
Right? Yeah. And because you don't have the time to eat, as crazy as that sounds.
And I'm always stressed.
And you're always stressed. So you're putting an extra burden and responsibility on you that technically the government and the people are supposed to do, right?
But I can't see it any other way at this point, because I can only I've been that person where I've been so frustrated by these things for so long that I can only now put myself, the only way that I'm gonna be able to sleep or handle it is if I keep putting myself in a position to change it and make an impact, whether it's supporting someone or running myself, which is looking like that's gonna happen, because I'm just tired of these things happening now. I'm like, so why isn't it changing? Because we're just so behind. Our system, our judicial system, everything just moves too slow. And it's not even, we're not updating at all. We're not updating our educational system. We're not updating anything as we're moving. We're moving along, but our system is behind. And that's what bothers me.
By design too.
We have we have these senators and governors and things like that still don't even know what a website is, right? What is social media? It's like, how you don't even know where the people are. So how can you reach them? How can you teach them? How can you understand?
So why are you in that position?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Exactly. So let's change that.
Yeah. And like I said, thank you. I really appreciate that for you to like. I've been alone a long time. I felt like I was alone in a corner inside where prison is set up. Like, it's literally designed to subjugate everything. You know, we experience life through our senses, right? Our sight, sound, taste, touch, and prison is a calculated design to subjugate all that and keep people away.
Wow.
And so for you to burden yourself, right, with the responsibility, and it's more so like what's right. That's where you're at, and what's right is hard. And so for you to show that type of support to me personally, and we just met not even an hour ago, and like, I just want to thank like you, and it took people like you to bring me tangible hope, not hope that's conceptual and of the mind, but like physical hope, like to show me that you're in there, you're on the front lines and doing this work for people that probably can't. That's why I'm extremely grateful. Without really even knowing you, I'm extremely grateful. Now that I've sat here and talked to you, it shows so much about your vision and your activism, advocacy, all of that. And I'm sitting here feeling very happy and supported.
Well, thank you, because I really appreciate that. But the first thing I started thinking of when you said that is like, do you realize that you are that for so many in prison right now, that you literally changed this bill to help them? You're that for them. So I just want you to realize that, because as much as like I can support you, you're supporting so many that's literally lived this life that you live. So that is just amazing.
Well, it takes a village.
Yeah, I know,
It takes us all.
No, I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Anyways, you guys, make sure that you go and subscribe to Adnan. And thank you again for being here. And I love you guys. Stay amazing, stay proud, stay woke. Peace.